What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Line Movement NBA show. I'm Dieter Kurtenbach, joined by the guru, Matt LaMarca. Matt, how you doing today, man?
Oh man, I'm great. That intro music that gets me just jacked up.
Yeah.
I'm ready to
Ready
to talk some hoops. Can I freestyle a few bars before we do that?
Can you? I would love to hear
No.
it. Okay.
No, I can't.
Listen, man, you're going to give me an opportunity like that. I'm going to take you up on it. That's how we're going to do things here at Line Movement in the NBA show. Let's talk about what the hell we've already seen in the NBA bubble before we get to some of the great games we have today, Saturday. Apparently, defense optional in the bubble. Anyone who had overs living pretty right now. Matt, just your immediate takeaways first couple of days of bubble basketball.
Yeah, I mean, the first day kind of threw us off, right? Because that was two defensive, hard-fought, under-type games.
Right.
And then yesterday, just all hell broke loose. I mean, that game between the Mavs and the Rockets, they combined to score over 300 points. I mean, Granted, there wasn't overtime, but yeah, I mean, defense was certainly optional yesterday. So we'll see what these teams are going to bring to the Saturday slate.
Anything shock you out of Friday night's games? Anything surprise you at all?
Not so much. I mean, Dallas, we know, is a very good team offensively. I mean, they probably deserve to win that game versus the Rockets.
Yeah.
I will say my biggest shock was that the Celtics hung with the Bucks, despite Jason Tatum going 2 for 16 from the field at one point.
Yep.
You know, they were only down 2 in the fourth quarter, and Tatum had not scored the ball. One of his baskets came when Milwaukee accidentally tipped the ball into their own basket, and Tatum just happened to be the closest player to the play. So they got nothing from Tatum in that game, and they still managed to hang with Milwaukee. So I think that's overall an encouraging sign, even though they ultimately lost the game.
That do anything to dissuade you from advising people to take a Bucks futures position? I know you were already kind of a little pessimistic on them, that the value wasn't there, and I know you were in on the Celtics, but did that game sway you in any way? I know you're not very persuadable, but maybe. I mean, Tatum doesn't have a good game, and the Celtics hang around. What did that tell you?
I can be persuaded. I can definitely be persuaded, but in this case, I don't love the number for the Bucks. I still think the Bucks are the best team in the East. They should win the East, but you have to pay, minus 170 or so to back them to win the East, and that's just not enough value for me. The time to bet the Bucks was earlier in the season or before the season, and if you miss that train, I don't think this is the right time to chase.
All right, so let's talk about today's games. And we're going to skip over Miami and Denver because by the time you're seeing this, that thing is pretty close to tip-off. And we don't want to give you any advice that's going to be too tight on the tip-off there. So let's go straight to Utah and Oklahoma City. Man, I want to get your perspective on what we saw from Utah in that first game, because it seemed like they were really featuring Rudy Gobert early. The Donovan Mitchell, Rudy Gobert saga seems to be dramatically overstated. I thought they played pretty good ball, but they don't have Bogdanovich. They're going to have problems scoring the ball in the half court. They tried to speed up the pace. Maybe Oklahoma City is a team that they can do that with. But, man, I'm really worried about their long-term prospects if they can't score in the half court, because we know that's what playoff basketball is all about. What do you think about the Utah Jazz right now?
I'm worried about the Jazz, and we talked about this on our first show, and I brought this up in my Western Conference futures piece, but the Bogdanovich injury is just monstrous. He was one of their best players this season in terms of net rating differential. He was second on the team in usage rate, third in minutes per game, and with his absence, it means we're going to get a lot of Jordan Clarkson. And while the numbers look good with Jordan Clarkson, I mean, he played about as good as humanly possible in that first game against the Pelicans.
You betting on that to happen again? I'm not.
Either way, the Jazz were still outscored by 16 points with Clarkson on the floor in that game.
Oh, no, don't tell me stuff like that. That's terrible, man. How are they supposed to win games if that's the case? If they're relying on a guy and he has that kind of plus minus, that's just not doable going forward, man.
Right. The starters were all very good for the Jazz, which we kind of expected, right? They just don't have any depth anymore without Bogdanovich. So ultimately, even though they won that game, I'm taking that game as a negative overall for the Jazz. Zion Williamson was limited to just 15 minutes. We know that as he goes, the Pelicans go. They
Right.
were only really a good team with him on the court this season. They increased their net rating by roughly 9.5 points per 100 possessions with Zion on the court prior to the shutdown. So without a big impact from Zion, the fact that the Jazz were still trailing in that game by like 15, 16 points at certain points, I don't view that as a positive. The Jazz were able to get some buckets because the Pelicans defense is so bad, just putting it frankly.
Yeah.
That's not going to happen today with the Thunder. Their starting unit, their main unit, the Chris Paul, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, Dennis Schroeder, Danilo Gallinari, Steven Adams, that 5-man combination has blitzed teams all year. Their net rating is like a plus 25 with those guys on the court. And I think we should see plenty of them, given this format in Orlando. So I'm definitely in on the Thunder today.
It seems like the public's in on the Thunder too, because this thing opened up in most places with Utah as a 2-point favorite. It's flipped all the way together in some places where people are now in as the Thunder have moved to a favorites, at least with some sites. Let's talk about those Pellies, and let's talk about Zion Williamson. I would venture to say, given everything that New Orleans needs to do, and they have a game with the Clippers tonight, that's 6 p.m. Eastern tip-off. So kind of important, all things considered, given that they lost their first game. I would have thought that they would have played their best player for the final 90 seconds of a game. That's just me. I don't know anything about basketball, but, maybe play your best guy just a little bit at the end of the game, even if he's on a minutes restriction. Is Zion's limitation in how much the Pelicans are going to play him, and we don't really even know why they're limiting him as much as they are, is that limitation reason enough to kind of get off of that bandwagon? Because when he plays, they're awesome. They're incredible. You just mentioned the crazy stats, but I don't know how much he's going to play, and I don't know if I feel comfortable putting money on a team where I don't know if their best player is going to be on the court, if they're going to load manage them throughout quarters as opposed to just skipping the entire game altogether. Where do you stand with the Pelicans right now, Matt?
Yeah, I think, if you listen to GM David Griffin, this is not going away. Zion missed a lot of time during the scrimmages portion because he had to leave the bubble. And fair or not, they don't think that he is properly conditioned at this point to play more than just, short 3-4 minute bursts at this point. So I think for sure he's probably going to be 20 minutes or less again tonight. And against the Clippers, who are, by most measures, the third best team in basketball this season, that is going to be a problem.
What did you make of the Clippers' performance against the Lakers the other night? I thought that they played well. They're still trying to figure some stuff out. They're obviously, shorthanded in a couple of areas. What are you expecting from the Clippers tonight?
Yeah, I mean, still no Montrezl Harrell for the Clippers. That was a huge absence for them. I kind of downplayed that absence leading into that game, but it's clear that they need him for the Anthony Davis types of the world. Paul George and Kawhi Leonard, as good of defenders as they are, they cannot guard Anthony Davis. He's just too big. And, Davis got to the line, I think 17 times in that game.
Yep.
That is not a very good way to win a basketball game by fouling a player that much. So I do think that the Clippers, as they get healthier, Patrick Beverley was also limited in that game.
Yeah.
And his presence is really big for this team, especially without Lou Williams. Yeah. I do think that this team, in my opinion, again, is the best team in basketball when they're at their best. So, Kawhi, he looked good. I thought, it was an encouraging sign after he kind of struggled a bit during the scrimmages.
Yeah.
Paul George played great.
Yep.
I'm still very bullish on the Clippers long term. I think that this team is only going to get better the deeper that we get into the Orlando situation.
They're about a 5-point favorite tonight, and again, that's without Lemon Pepper Lou and Montrezl Harrell. Those are the guys that can provide a lot of scoring off of the bench for that team. I'm glad you brought up Pat Beverley, though, because that does change a lot of the complexion. When you can go with Pat Beverley guarding the point guard, Kawhi and Paul George on the wings, that is one hell of a defensive backcourt, all things. Because I know backcourt is very nebulous these days, but that's pretty damn good for a perimeter based league. And the Pellies, as much as they do want to feed the ball down into the low post, when Zion's not in there, they don't really use the post ever. They're the dunker spot. They don't use anything under the hoop. They are a dribble drive team that wants to space the floor out. They're going to always play that stretch four unless Zion's on the court. So I think that the Clippers are really well equipped. If they're interested in playing, which is always the issue with the Clippers, if they're interested in playing, if they care about their seeding, and maybe there's no reason to care about their seeding, then I think that the 5 is probably, in fact, a little bit generous towards the Pelicans, all things considered. Philadelphia and Indiana. We don't talk about the Pacers ever. That is for a variety of reasons, but they're in it, and they play scrappy. They're well coached. They know what they're doing. We talk about the Sixers all the time because they're enigmatic and no one knows what the hell's going on. And there is this notion that still persists that if the Sixers figure it out, it's game over for the rest of the league. I don't buy into that, but now it's become narrative. Where do we stand on the Sixers? Where do we on this very nebulous Sixers team with Ben Simmons as a power forward and Shake Milton as a point guard? And where do we stand with the Pacers right now? How are you feeling about this game?
So I'll start with the Pacers. The big injury news, no Domantas Sabonis.
Okay.
You know, he left the bubble after a pretty severe ankle injury. And it seems like his season is probably done. Yeah. That's a huge loss for them. He was their best player this season. I think most people would be surprised if they saw his numbers. You know, over 18 points a game, 12 and a half rebounds a game, 5 assists per game. The list of guys who have accomplished that feat really, really slim for a full season. You know, it's like 10 guys. 8 of them are in the Hall of Fame. One of them is Giannis Antetokounmpo, and one of them is DeMarcus Cousins.
Jeez Louise.
So just really, really good company for Sabonis. It does look like Victor Oladipo and Malcolm Brogdon are trending towards playing in this contest, which will obviously help them. But no Sabonis is just a huge loss that I don't know if that's being priced in enough.
Yeah. What do you make of these lines? Because I'm looking at it, and yes, don't get me wrong, but we don't know what the hell's going on with the Sixers. And this experiment, as much as everyone feels good about it, might be a complete disaster once the games become real. But I don't think there's enough respect being put on Philadelphia's name looking at some of these numbers.
Yeah, I mean, I think that what they're trying here is definitely the right decision. You know, they're breaking up the trio of Ben Simmons, Al Horford, and Joel Embiid, which clearly can't play together.
Nope.
They've posted a net rating of -1 when all 3 of those guys are on the court together this season.
Ooh,
so
that's
now
rough.
I looked it up. Their net rating with Shake Milton instead of Al Horford and Ben Simmons and Joel Embiid is like -18 points per 100 possessions.
Tell me it's a small sample size, Matt LaMarca. Tell me it's a small sample
size.
Okay.
So we'll see how this thing ultimately works. I do think that the floor spacing, like just trying to put more floor spacing out there around Embiid in general is a great idea, right? But it's kind of reliant on Ben Simmons being at least a competent threat from the outside. And it's going to take more than a couple 3-pointers during meaningless scrimmage games for me to get behind that actually being the case.
It's just so interesting because we watch obviously the Rockets last night, and we're seeing what the Bucks are doing, and they've been doing it for a while now with this, true 5-out system that they have, where the ball is just in the best player's hands, and he can do what he wants, dribble and dish, and hit guys for 3-pointers on the outside. You would think that with a guy like Ben Simmons, a guy who cannot shoot, but it can get to the basket as well as anybody, and certainly a guy that you want on the floor, you want the ball in his hands, that would be the option. But when you have Joel Embiid, you just can't do it. And it's almost the same reasons that the Rockets traded away Clint Capella. It's like there's a dude standing under the basket that kind of defeats the purpose of driving to the basket because now you're throwing an extra defender at this body. So I guess the option with the Sixers was just put them both under the basket. Like, I'm very interested to see how Simmons, you're 100% right on Simmons as a 3-point threat, quote unquote. I'm more interested in seeing how that offense works when he gets the ball on the perimeter. He's not going to shoot it. Like he's just not going to shoot it all that often unless you leave him absolutely wide open. And even then he might hesitate. I'm interested to see how he can penetrate off of non-primary, ball handling jobs. Like he's going to get the ball as a secondary ball handler. And will that offense be able to function if he goes to the hoop in those situations? If it can, then they got something. If it can't, then they need to blow it up even more. Now we need to just have Ben Simmons and no Joel Embiid. We're going to have to totally tranche those minutes apart because I'm just having a really hard time seeing the mesh fit. And I don't know how many years we've been doing it now, a couple. The fact that we're at this juncture tells us that it probably won't work. And this might be the one that says it just doesn't work overall, and one of these guys has got to go.
Yeah, I agree. And just looking at the betting lines in this game, it appears that the over is the preferred side here for a lot of people, which makes sense because Philly is playing faster with their new lineup. I believe I saw that both of these teams were top 10 in pace during the scrimmages.
Sounds right to me.
But yeah, so the number on this game has risen by literally 10 points. What? It's opened at around 210. Now it's around 220. The way the number stands now, I'm taking the under.
Yeah.
I know that that's kind of going against what the quote unquote sharps are doing out there, but I just think that this team needs to prove to me that they can score the ball. Philadelphia, that is. And
I think the Pacers need
Indiana has
score the ball. Like both of these teams need to
some
prove
clear
they have competent offense. Beyond that, let's just establish they're both pretty good defensive teams. Like it's not as if it's going to be just easy givens like it was in the Dallas-Houston game. Like these guys are actually probably going to play a little bit of defense, if for no other reason than they don't know if they can score on offense. So they're going to definitely have to stop the other team from scoring. So I'm with you on the under. I'm surprised at that sharp action, by the way. That's very peculiar to me. People reading too much into pace. That was a scrimmage. Now these games count for real. Stuff has changed.
The scrimmages, same is true for the NBA preseason.
Yeah.
It's always significantly faster than when the real games start. So, I know there were a lot of overs yesterday, but today is a new day. We can't just say, okay, all the overs hit yesterday, so all the overs are going to hit today. If it was that easy, we'd all be rich. You wouldn't need me and Dieter here doing this show.
And I'll say this, man. Like you think, it's going to get fast. Some teams aren't trying. Some teams don't care about their seeding. Some teams are just going to see how much they can score. Teams that are good on the defensive end, they're probably going to want to show that early on if they're actually giving a damn about this operation. I would venture to say that Philadelphia and Indiana, given their positions in the Eastern Conference, two teams that should give a damn. Whereas, other teams, go have an open run, see what happens. Doesn't really matter. So, I'm definitely in on that under action. As soon as this is done, you know where I'll be. Lakers, Toronto. Okay, blitz bet, which is only open to Canadian depositors right now. So congratulations, Canada. Another win over us in the States here. Pretty awesome offers here. It's a Raptors game. It's a Lakers game. You were already going to have action on it, but now there's some offers on top of that. So check that out at BlitzBet. Right now, the Lakers, I'm seeing 3.5. It's been fluctuating. Can get down to 2.5, 3.5. We're looking at the Lakers as a nice, solid favorite. What do we expect out of Toronto? What did we see out of the Lakers that maybe gives you pause? Matt LaMarca, give me your breakdown of this game, buddy.
Yeah, this is another one where I'm sort of on a different side, I think, than most, quote unquote, sharp bettors.
This is why we pay you the big bucks, baby. Tell me what you know.
I like the Lakers here. I think that the Lakers need one more win, right? One more win secures the top seed for them in the West. I was a little bit worried about rest for them, but LeBron probable, Anthony Davis probable, Kyle Kuzma probable. I think that they want to get this thing done, get it settled, and then they can sort of coast for the rest of these games, get rest in where they can, wherever they want. So the Raptors did beat the Lakers in their first meeting this year. I think that is a lot of the reason why people like them in this contest. That game was also in LA. But I just don't think that the Toronto Raptors match up that well with LeBron James. We saw the opposite in the first game where the Clippers match up really well with LeBron and Anthony Davis took over. Today, Anthony Davis has the tough matchup against Serge Ibaka and Marc Gasol, but LeBron is basically going to have the ability to do whatever he wants. I mean, no disrespect to Pascal Siakam, but he is not nearly on the same level defensively as guys like Kawhi Leonard and Paul George. So
if Pascal Siakam put on the quarantine 15 and then added another 15 pounds of muscle on top of that, he might be able to hold off LeBron. But for now, I'm going to go with LeBron James overpowering him. I think that's a good call.
Especially gray beard LeBron James. I know he shaved or dyed most of it before that Clippers game, but
got that just
that's
for
like
men's
him.
strength.
That's like going Super Saiyan for LeBron. You know, he's got those gray patches in there. It's just a whole new level of power that we haven't seen yet. I believe in the gray.
It's got some Nate Thurman vibes going on. And that was the last guy you would ever want to mess with in the NBA. So all he has to do is just let the hair on the top go, and then he's going to have the ultimate old man strength. He'll play until he's 42. Oh. He'll go out on top. I'm with you. I think there's power in the beard. I think that there's power in just looking like you actually look and allowing your game to do all the talking, because it's intimidating getting your ass kicked by an old man, I imagine. And he's showing it off in full glory. Let's be real about this too. I'm so glad that you brought up that they're going to probably just go for it. They were going so hard against the Clippers, man. That felt like a playoff game. They were going hard as hell. So I don't know how you could say that they're not going for it. I mean, both, yeah, and that was great, because the Clippers, sometimes they're like, nah, not today. The Lakers, they can do that too, don't get me wrong, but like seeing LeBron, seeing Anthony Davis like going all the way out. Maybe LeBron's just trying to prove that the bubble was a good idea. Maybe he's just trying to get the NBA back, takes that on as sort of the main marketer of the game. Doesn't matter to me, man. It worked for me. What I was watching was good quality, high level playoff intensity basketball. I don't think they turn that off. I think they want to keep that momentum going. I think you are 1,000% correct. This is a team that wants to get it done and over with. They do it tonight. It's probably done and over with. They can rest up. They can enjoy the bubble life as much as you can enjoy a bubble life, and figure out who their opponent is in the 8th seed. And it's going to be a long time before they have to go hard again, because there's probably going to be a play-in game or 2 or 3. And so it could be a couple of weeks, honestly, before they have to play hard again. Maybe they even leave the bubble and come back. They have enough time to quarantine after it's all said and done. But get it done early. I'm telling you, that wouldn't. I don't know if it's the best idea. It's probably a terrible one, but somebody could leave and come back. They might have that much time. So LeBron's got a lot of business ventures. I'm not sure he can handle all of them from Orlando. I'm with you. I'm with you on the Lakers tonight. I think that they're just going to go for it. And I was a little bit disturbed by the fact that they were playing JaVale McGee so much, like that they stuck with the true center and Anthony Davis at the 4 situation that they've done the entire regular season. I thought that maybe they would switch into, hey, we're in playoff mode. Anthony Davis is our center now, and do that at least a little more often. I didn't see it as much as maybe I want to see it. Tonight is not really the night to mess around with that, because you are playing a team that can go 2 bigs on the floor as well, which is one of the few teams in the NBA. So that's something to keep an eye on if Frank Vogel wants to switch that up a little bit. But I'm with you 100%, man. Like they're going for it. LeBron has the gray beard power, gray beard energy. Anthony Davis, whatever happened to his eye wasn't much of an issue. And I like the supporting cast. As much concerns as I had about their backcourt defense, it looked pretty good, all things considered. And when LeBron's engaged, everything looks good on that team. He's going to be there tonight, man. I think it's going to be a really good game, but I would definitely be on the Lakers side of things. How do you feel about the total?
The total, I think, might be, again, it depends on if these teams are going to play faster and ratchet up the defense. This is another total that is on the rise.
Yeah.
I lean towards the under again, but it wouldn't shock me if we don't get the same super intense performance out of the Lakers.
Okay.
Like, I expect them to really try to win this game. I just don't know if they're gonna. That, like you said, that game against the Clippers was full playoff intensity.
For sure.
That was a 10 out of 10 on the scale.
It was awesome.
I think today maybe we get like a 7 or an 8 on the intensity meter. One thing real quick on the Raptors too is they've been impressive this season. I think they've exceeded most expectations for what would happen without Kawhi, but they do not have the same ceiling that they had last year. They're just 11-14 versus teams with a winning record this year. So
interesting.
I think that doesn't bode well for them long term. The Lakers obviously qualify as a team with a winning record. So I think that Toronto, they're in terms of net rating, they're a top 5 team in the league. I don't know if I would consider them a top 5 team in the league for the playoffs.
Let's talk about some of the Sunday action. We don't have a lot of great numbers out right now, but maybe you got them because you're a guru. You got the numbers. But Washington and Brooklyn is a game that we won't acknowledge is actually happening. If you want to bet on it, go ahead. But that means you're probably going to have to watch it.
It's an over game right there.
Yeah. Oh, my God. Is that – I don't know where the line – what would the total have to be for you to say I'm actually taking the under?
250-ish.
Yeah.
I mean, that line should be around 240, 245 even. If it's not, that's a hammer over spot because that's what do they care? Those guys are there to get a sweat in.
Washington's still there. Like, why just go home? Just forfeit the games. What's it matter? So bad.
Yeah, I mean, these guys, you got to feel bad for them, but they are still pros, So
yeah, they're getting.
I just expect a lot of offense in that game.
Portland and Boston should be a good one. Portland showed me something in their game last night. I liked what I saw. I think Gary Trent Jr., who's kind of sleeper, I think that he's come through a little bit. He's playing a little defense now. I think that they have a solid rotation piece. Nurkic looked pretty good. Zach Collins, I think, is the guy, and we saw it last night. He's going to close for them, and I think that's a nice 5-man unit out there where they're spacing the floor with Collins. Dame and CJ are going to bring it. They have something to play for. Boston coming off of that loss against Milwaukee, maybe trying to get back into a rhythm. There's still a lot of things that they need to figure out. We know the people, we know the lineups, but they I don't know if they ever really hit a groove this season where it felt like, oh yeah, we're a championship contender. They got to get that mojo going. I think that game could be absolutely fascinating with Portland and Boston. What are you thinking about it?
Well, you forgot Carmelo Anthony, the star of the game. Some huge 3-pointers in the fourth quarter and overtime. Melo,
and that
who would have thought?
Not important. I would have thought it. I mean, all he has to do is stand in the corner and knock down corner threes. Like that's been his entire career. Like he'll be able to do that until he's 50 if he doesn't actually have to engage on the other side of the floor. His
career is usually one step inside the 3-point line, so this is an improvement.
Valid. Okay, fair enough. He got the memo that the shot that's one step back counts for an extra point. And listen, I like that. I like that 5-man closing lineup. Now, at some point, someone is going to just run at Carmelo every single possession in crunch time. But until that point happens, keep going because if you got a guy who can knock down a corner three, I know that is the most common shot in basketball, the one that we're all going for. But geez, Louise, like not a lot of teams seem to have that guy. And he's a guy who can do it. So, credit to Melo, man. I know that the hype is kind of off the charts given what he's actually producing, but it was enjoyable to watch. That was a really enjoyable game to watch with Portland last night.
If you're a Blazers backer, the most encouraging thing was Yusuf Nurkic. I wasn't sure if they were just going to throw him, right to the Wolves. And he played over 30 minutes in that game. And he is a difference maker. Of all the teams in the bubble, that might be the biggest addition that any team got. His net rating differential last year was right up there with Damian Lillard in terms of importance to the Blazers. Yeah. So I thought they might do a little bit more of a timeshare thing with him and Hassan Whiteside, but they are all in on Nurkic, and if he's healthy, that's the correct decision. So that is definitely a very good optimistic sign for the Blazers.
He's just a savvy basketball player, and he's playing with guys who are savvy. Like it's just a smarter lineup out there. With Whiteside, he can be a bit of a hole when the ball gets to him. It's just, I guess I have to score now. No, you don't. You can pass it. You can do other stuff with the ball. Nurkic is going to find a couple nice passes. He obviously was able to get to the hoop a couple of times. Like he looked good. He looked really good. Now, how long can he maintain it? How much rest are you really getting? There's no travel. I don't know. We'll have to see it going forward, but I agree with you 100%. Melo, positive. Nurkic, positive. I mean, the Blazers were a team that were in the Western Conference Finals last year. I know that maybe that was a bit of a fluke given the way that the bracket went, but they still had to get there. They still had to win some series. Like they have the talent to get into the tournament. If I'm Memphis, that's probably the last team I want to face, all things considered, if we have to do an 8-9 play in 3-game series. Like I don't want to face the Portland Trail Blazers and all of that firepower if they're coming into rhythm right now. Should we consider them the favorite at this juncture to play Memphis if it does get to something like that?
I'm not going there yet. I guess I should say yes.
Who do you like?
They are the favorite, but are they the best betting value? That I don't agree with.
That's a good question. Who do you like?
I'm still riding the Spurs, baby.
No reason not to.
I'm still riding the Spurs we got them at 13-1 before the restart. Yep. And I'm telling you, the absence of LaMarcus Aldridge is going to be a positive for them. If you look too at the remaining schedules, the Blazers have a tough schedule. Mm-hmm. The Spurs, not nearly in the same ballpark. And I really like what San Antonio is going to do. They're going to be playing their young guys. They're going to be playing small. Mm-hmm. DeRozan. I think that this team has much more of a chance than the odds makers are giving them.
And they get Memphis tomorrow afternoon. So a chance to just make up a game right there. I'm with you. What I saw out of the Spurs last night was really encouraging. They look like a completely different team. And DeRozan seems to fit in better, right? Like when you have kind of a playoff style game, sometimes you just need a dude who can get a bucket in the mid-range. DeMar DeRozan doesn't do much else, but he can get you a bucket in the mid-range.
He is a walking bucket. Walking bucket.
That's what I'm saying.
And the thing about the Spurs that was such a negative is that him and Aldridge operate in essentially the same area of the court. So now that area is wide open for DeMar to do his thing.
Yeah, you've totally convinced me. The value was always there, just given coaching and they had the talent. I mean, not a lot of people pay attention to it, but they had the talent. And now it does seem to be fitting together better. What did you make of the Sacramento Kings last night? Because I've been high on them, and I might need to get off of some of those positions. I might need to hedge a bit because the defense was abysmal. I love what De'Aaron Fox is doing. Bogey's there. Like they have the players on the offensive end. I think they can get the points up, but man, they cannot. Dude, they can't stop anybody. And that's going to be a huge problem for them because, at some point you're going to have to get a defensive stop. You can't outscore everybody. They're not that talented to where they can just put up mad buckets and worry about the outcome later. Like, what did you make out of Sacramento?
Buckets, If I was a Kings fan, I would just every morning I would wake up and say, how did we take Marvin Bagley over Luka Doncic? How?
Yes. I mean,
could you imagine swapping those two guys? You put Luka on the Kings. Man, that is a different team. Because you're right, De'Aaron Fox is coming into his element.
Yeah, I like him.
He's figuring out how he wants to play. He's sort of like a John Wall. He's very John Wallian, in my opinion. Yeah. And before John Wall got hurt, he was one of the better point guards in the league. Sure. A 20-10 type of guy, nightly threat. Yeah. I think that this Kings team still has a lot of work to do, but there are some encouraging signs with Fox, with Bogdanovich. Buddy Hield has kind of taken a step back this year, which you don't love, but this team needs Marvin Bagley. If they want to become contenders, they need to get some production from their number 2 overall pick. And I know that this is basically a lost year for him.
Yeah.
But we need him to come back next year and show us something.
Okay, the game of Sunday is obviously Milwaukee and Houston. That is going to be must-see TV. If you enjoy NBA basketball, and Lord knows if you're watching this, maybe you just enjoy betting on stuff. But I would venture to say that you have some interest in NBA basketball. Milwaukee and Houston is going to be incredible. I'll say this. I was only able to catch parts of the Houston game at the moment last night with Dallas. But if you just watch the highlights, James Harden is God. Like I kind of see why NBA Twitter and sort of this NBA social media nebulous culture that we have going on treats Harden with such reverence. Because I have to watch the full 48 minutes of him most of the time. And I go, this is kind of boring. Like he's incredible. He makes plays that no one else is even thinking of. Don't get me wrong. I'm not trying to take away from his greatness. But it is a little rote at times. You just watch the highlights. You would think that this man is the greatest basketball player who ever lived. He has not lost anything in the hiatus. The 5-out, I think, works big time. The numbers weren't really in their favor last night. They still won the game in terms of three-point shooting. I don't know if they're going to stop anybody all that much, but they're going to be able to score at will. So long as the three-point variance doesn't go absolutely dramatically against them, they're going to be able to put the ball through the hoop. get 120 something points per game going forward. I feel very confident in the Rockets, and I think that ultimately Milwaukee, they're a really good team. They don't have as much to play for. 2 teams going 5 out is going to be great basketball in my estimation, but I would not be shocked at all if Houston straight up wins this game against the Bucks on Sunday night, and that's going to change a lot of narratives around the league, I imagine. What are you expecting out of this contest?
If Milwaukee plays all their guys, and Eric Bledsoe obviously is still in the quarantine phase, or at least still getting his conditioning up after testing positive, for COVID a few weeks ago. So it's not the full version of the Bucks, but if it is, they can't beat, or they will destroy the Rockets. Maybe not destroy. They will beat the Rockets. How in the world is that team going to stop Giannis?
They won't. They'll just concede it.
They struggled with Kristaps big time yesterday.
Valid.
And Giannis is Kristaps times, I don't know, 7, 8.
Kristaps is playing really good ball, man. I don't know if I'd go 7 or 8. He's definitely a factor form above Kristaps, but Kristaps is balling. I mean that.
Yes, he is. No disrespect to Kristaps.
Yeah, no, we're not throwing disrespect towards it. That Dallas offense is something incredible. But man, I think about so what's the way that you stop Giannis? Right, you make him shoot mid-range shots. You clog the lane. I don't know, man. You just put PJ Tucker and Robert Covington on him. You make him.
He'll go right over those guys.
Fine, make him go over them 100 times. I don't know. There's no answer. It's tough. I mean, maybe if you had Clint Capella still, Tyson Chandler, I think, has played 1 minute in the last 5 years. So it's not like you can just stick him under the hoop and hope that it stops. I think you just have to go blow for blow and hope that you make more threes than the Bucks do. And frankly, I kind of like Rocket shooters more than I like the Bucks shooters. So maybe that's the entire game.
That's fair.
I guess Giannis, the beauty of the Milwaukee system is Giannis is also an incredible defensive player. And the Lopez twins are also really good at protecting the rim. They'll give up the 3, but they protect the rim at a really high rate, and that usually works out for them. So Milwaukee's the better team, don't get me wrong. But man, 3-point variance is absolutely crazy. And I like Houston shooters more. I'm on a Houston Rockets 5. Don't knock me off it right now, man. I think we're just going to ride it until it doesn't work anymore. And when it doesn't work, trust me, we'll know exactly why it didn't work. There is not a lot of mixing and matching here. They got one way to win a game. I just think they're really good at that one way right now.
Yeah, they're fun. They're definitely. I mean, I stand hard for James Harden. I think he gets a lot of unnecessary hate. I think there are so many people out there that are like, you give anybody that kind of usage rate and they'll put up those numbers.
Nope.
And it's just not true.
Nope.
Not to mention his performances are directly correlated to Rockets wins.
Mm-hmm.
I looked it up. Harden has now scored 40 or more points. I believe it's 19 times this season. Okay. And the Rockets are 17-2 in those games.
Oh, that seems like
they need his scoring. Yeah. That's how that team is built. Yeah. So it's not empty. It's not empty stats, you think about certain guys that play for bad teams, their scoring doesn't matter. Harden's scoring matters. So absolutely. I respect James Harden. I really do. I just think that Milwaukee is a different beast.
We don't have to talk about the Phoenix-Dallas game, do we? Is that required that we talk
That's
about
another one where if the over is under 240, or, if the total is set at 240 or less, just fire away on the over.
Let's just go over one more time, just Saturday's numbers and get your positions on them, Matt. Utah, Oklahoma City, where you're in on Oklahoma City in this game?
I'm taking the Thunder.
Okay. Pellies and Clippers, we're looking at about 5.5 points for the Clippers.
Yeah, this one is a pass for me, but I will tentatively take the Clippers.
Okay.
I don't know if this is a full bore Kawhi game. If I knew I was getting a full Kawhi game here, I would back the Clippers. After a grueling game versus the Lakers, this team has been load management all year. I'm exercising a little bit of caution.
Philadelphia versus the Pacers. Philly's getting about 5, some places 6 points. Giving. What do you make of this? I mean, obviously, 2 very different teams Indiana, I don't really know what they're going to give us. Philadelphia, I guess we know who they're going to give us. I don't know how that's going to work. Where are you at on this?
Yeah, this game, I'm taking the under. I think there's a lot of uncertainty with both offenses. These are two teams that were top 7 in defensive efficiency prior to the shutdown. So I'm banking on the under here. This total has risen by nearly 10 points. I think it's too much.
And Lakers in Toronto with some great offers for our Canadian depositors on BlitzBet. Lakers getting 3.5 point favorites in this one. 3.5, depending on where you're going. Hey, listen, you get some of these great offers. Who the hell knows how high it can go? Check out BlitzBet. Where are you at? Lakers, Toronto.
Give me the Lakers. I think they want to get the top seed clinched. That allows them to, do whatever they want for the rest of these reseeding games. They can give LeBron a night off. They can give Davis a night off. They can experiment a little bit more with their rotations, which we didn't mention. Dion Waiters. Shout out to Dion Waiters, man. That guy was huge for them off the bench versus the Clippers. I mean, his net rating was like plus 17, I think. So Waiters was like the difference.
Not bet the Lakers. That's every reason to not bet the Lakers going forward.
Nah, Waiters Island, baby. Waiters Island is officially in season. We're open and accepting applications.
Waiters Island was sunk about 3 years ago, and it has not come back up. It's the lost city of Atlantis. Matt LaMarca, he never loses. Always great, man.
It's not
Let's
true.
do it again real soon.
I lose plenty.
Don't worry. We don't tell people about that part. Matt LaMarca, the guru. Check him out, linemovement.com. And listen, if you guys haven't checked out BlitzBet yet, do it now. It's only open to Canadian depositors. Okay, so we're getting on that. We're trying to get down into the States. It's a brand new world. Stuff takes some time. But if you're up in the great country of Canada, if you're in any of the provinces, hit up BlitzBet, get some action on these NBA games. We got some great offers on the Raptors game on Saturday night. We're going to do this again real soon. Thanks for joining in. And if you liked what we did, subscribe, like, comment, tell a friend, tell your parents, tell a Canadian. Who knows? I'm Dieter Kurtenbach from Matt LaMarca. See you soon.